talking about financial abuse, fear, bankruptcy, ruined credit, and the terror many women feel when trying to leave toxic relationships. We wanted this episode to bring something equally important: hope. Because no matter how financially devastated you feel right now, it's not too late to rebuild. Not at 40, not at 58, and not at 63. Not after a divorce, not after bankruptcy, not after financial abuse. In today's conversation, we sit down with David Nassif, who was fired at 63 years old. Terrified he would lose everything and eventually rebuilt his financial life in ways he never thought possible. This conversation is not about get rich quick. It's about resilience, wisdom, faith, rebuilding, and realizing your future is not over. Have you ever felt something was wrong but couldn't explain it? Like the person you love was slowly chipping away at your sense of self?
We've been there. Different marriages, but to the same man, with the same toxic pattern. But God was still working.
We're Lizzie and Dina, women of faith, survivors, and truth tellers.
Surviving toxic relationships is for any woman stuck in confusion, healing after betrayal, or searching for her voice again.
You are not crazy.
You are deeply loved. Hey everybody, welcome to today's episode of Surviving Toxic Relationships. I am so excited to introduce David Nassif. David is the author of The One-Page Wealth Compass. After hitting #1 as an Amazon hot new release in its first week, the book's momentum only grew, topping the Amazon charts in its second month across the retirement, investing, and budgeting categories. David is here to share his story of being fired at age 63 and how he used a simple one-page strategy to become a millionaire by 69. In his book, he shares that exact compass along with the hope and practical steps he wished he had known decades earlier. He is here to show us that it's never too late to navigate safely to financial freedom. And I will add that I told David that I'm especially excited because our audience, a lot of times we feel trapped in these relationships simply because we cannot afford to leave, or we're terrified as to what's going to happen, with our children, our family, our well-being. So I think this is going to be some incredible information for all of you out there that are struggling or have struggled or know someone who's struggling and needs that assistance. So David, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Deanna and Lizzie. I'm excited to be here with you today. Appreciate the opportunity.
Our joy. Thank you. Well, we'd love to hear what got you to this point and a little bit, like she said, your story. And we know that you have quite a testimony to share.
Yes, well, when I was 63, I had just got fired after 18 years with the same company. Totally unexpected. I would not wish that day on anybody. I did the math, and if we had drained all of our savings and all of our retirement, we would be scheduled to be broke by 65. When most people are sitting back, relaxing after a lifetime of work, we'd be, I don't know where we would be, but it wouldn't be a good place. So anyways, I'm thinking, who's going to hire me at my age? But that wasn't even the hardest part. The hardest part was driving home thinking, how am I going to tell my wife? We had been married for 30 years. She did not deserve the mess I just threw her life in. You can't have a more wonderful wife. I just got so lucky with that. And I just dreaded that thought. But anyways, after a couple months of dead-end job searching, and my heart wasn't in it. I did not want to go back to the corporate world. But I had to put food on the table. I had to keep a roof over her head. I mean, I didn't have the luxury of saying, well, I'll just, transition to retirement. No, we would be transitioning over a cliff if I did that. So I just said, okay, but then I started interviewing and my heart was in it. I'm sure the employers could tell that. Here's what I heard from most employers in a much more professional and polite way. David, the company that fired you did the right thing because you're no value to us either. You're no value to anybody, basically. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, But I felt like I needed to do something, and I needed to do something quickly because our time was short. So I decided to take a huge risk. And I went to work as an independent sales agent on straight commission, no salary, no safety net, no benefits. The first months were brutal. cold calls, constant rejections, rookie mistakes. I heard more no's in 2 months than I think I've ever heard in a 2-month period of my life. But Deanna and Lizzie, I have to say, looking back, I can reflect on it now. At the time, it was pure misery, but I have to say, I think it was necessary for me to get all that resistance and rejection, because I believe it was helping me build the mental muscles I needed to punch through that dark period of my life. 10 months later, I hit an incredible milestone. I was suddenly making more money than my good paying corporate salary. And for a brief moment, I thought, we made it. But I thought, wait a minute, we didn't make nothing, because I'd been making good money for 40 years. And look where it got me, on the verge of financial ruin. I said, I have to learn how to invest. I have to learn how to build wealth. And I didn't have time for stuff, theories and people on commissions trying to get their cut and all that kind of thing. So I dug in myself. I read 21 books on personal finance, listened to 13 podcasts faithfully, read blogs, newsletters. Every time I got a good idea, I put it on this one piece of paper. I kept putting it on. And when the paper filled up, I said, I'm not going to go beyond one piece of paper because I want to keep it simple. So I would take the worst idea off and put a better one on. And I kept refining it until I got a set it and forget it approach, because I had a company to run. I couldn't be watching Wall Street and think what's going on there. Anyways, after 6 years, I did what I thought was impossible. From terrified, and I do mean terrified of being broke, to a 7-figure portfolio and real financial freedom. I now know it is never too late to rewrite your story. Because if I can pull that off starting as late as 63, I believe anybody can with the right direction.
That is so encouraging. And that really gives people hope for sure, because a lot of times we feel when the older we get, we're hitting a dead end. But you hear people say it's never too late, but then you feel like you're in that spot and you feel like it's too late. So what a great journey. I'm sure it was a very blood, sweat, and tears kind of journey.
It was.
What was some of the emotions? Because that is right there is a little bit of a trauma, because you have that fear, you have that anxiety, which anybody that's even not just who gets fired or laid off at a midlife age, so to speak, but also people who leave from a devastating marriage. There was financial abuse. I'm sure that there's a lot of people that would understand the emotions that you may have walked through in this process.
Yeah, let me tell you, that wasn't even my low point. If you wanted a low point, things like it should be. But actually, the low point of my whole experience there happened about a few weeks, maybe a month later. My wife was trying to conserve money the best we could so we didn't, get to the cliff too quickly. She said, honey, there's a big sale going on at this discount store that we normally didn't shop at. And she says, I want to go and stock up. Would you mind coming with me and helping? Well, I had nothing else to do. I was sending our resumes going nowhere. I said, sure, I'll be glad to help you. And so we get to the store and I look around, and what I see with my eyes is nothing but women and babies in baby carts crying. Now, I'm sure that isn't true. I'm sure there are plenty of men there, but that's why I felt like I don't belong here. I should be working, providing for my family, not in the middle of the week, in the middle of the day in a grocery store with all these people. I felt like I had a sign on me, the biggest loser. And I really felt so out of place. And then when my wife was checking out, I was waiting at the end of the counter for her to check out. And I'm telling you, I felt like I had a mental corporate straitjacket on me and I couldn't break out of it. The corporation threw me out. There was no more, but I still had the image on me. I'm still a corporate guy in my mind. I still had the company car, the nice suits, the expense accounts, the great pay, but that was no more. And maybe my ego didn't want to give it up or whatever, but there was this internal battle here. The world sees me and I see me as this, but I'm really not that anymore. And I remember I went home that night and I realized something. The corporate world told me I was of no value anymore. End of story. Wake up, David. It's time to wake up and do something else. I told the guy inside of me who was afraid to death to come out, hey, we got to fight this thing. This is my wife. This is my family's life is on the line here. And I cannot sit back and just curl up and give up. And so I fought, and I told you, when I went out there, I had no plan B. And I'm going to tell you, my deciding to start my own company, it was worse than I'm explaining to you, because I tried it twice in my 40s. twice, and I failed miserably. One time it plunged me into a serious six-figure debt that took me years to pay off. So it wasn't like a casual thing. Oh, I'm going to start my own company. I haven't tried that before. No, no, no. I have proven to myself I couldn't do it twice. The corporate world told me I was of no value to them. So I had like, where am I going to go? There's no place to go. But I says, okay, no one's going to hire me. That's for sure. So I have to hire myself. Despite my fears, despite my emotional scars, I'm going to start my own company a third time. Okay. But here's the one thing I said that was different. When I was in my 40s and I made those mistakes and failed, I learned lessons from that. I made mistakes, but I learned from those mistakes. And now at 63, I was wiser and smarter in terms of starting a company, and I wasn't going to make those mistakes again. I actually wrote down the mistakes so I didn't make them again. And as I was learning and I was growing, I was competing with people half my age with twice the energy that did not want me there because I would be taking business away from them, and they were determined to get with me. This is the thing I had going for me, which was, but I made a compass. We're going to talk about my wealth compass, but I also made a business compass for myself, my own agency compass. And I put on that my lessons learned from failures, what I read, like startup companies and lessons. And I kept filling that and refining that one. So I kind of had two compasses going at once because I had a miserable, impossible life when it came to investing. 40 years of failure. I made good money for 40 years, but I did fail for 40 because who is 63 and 2 months away from, that's evidence that I couldn't do it. I was a lousy, and then I failed it. So I mean, I was just, I felt like I was in two David and Goliath fights, and I was David in both of the fights. So, anyways, that's crazy.
Wow, that's
Go ahead, Dina.
I was just going to say that. And I mean, the financial piece, which I think honestly, most of America is literally 2 months away from the cliff at all times. I mean, I've read the statistics. Very few people have a savings account. Very few people have enough in their retirement, to go the distance for years if they lost their job. I mean, people are just paycheck to paycheck. So not only that, but then your identity. And we talk a lot about losing your identity in these relationships because, toxic, narcissistic type of relationships, they will tell you who you are and they will mold you to be what they want you to be to meet their needs. And so you leave those relationships with no identity. So very relatable.
Yep. Can I tell you a critical turning point that really happened for me? This is now more the positive because we've had a lot of negative. But anyways, with the time I was going through this dark period, I heard a true story that really opened my eyes to something important. The Max Planck Institute did an experiment. What they did is they placed people in the center of a dense German forest, and they told them to walk in a straight line to the edge. Now, these were confident and capable people, but when the clouds covered the sun and the GPS tracking was showing, they were gradually starting to walk in circular motion. Some of them were actually ending up right back where they began, but every one of them was absolutely convinced they were walking in a perfectly straight line the whole time. That is my life story for 40 years. I was working hard, making good money, doing what I thought was right when it came to investing and building wealth, but literally just walking in circles. And when I got to that point, I said, when I heard that story, I said, that's what I need. I need a compass, but not a mental compass like travelers use. I need a one-page compass to give me that 30,000-foot view so I don't go off track, so I don't go in circles like I had been doing for 40 years. And once that hit me, that's when I started my pursuit of reading, writing down lessons, testing things out, refining it, getting rid of the bad, putting the good in, and keeping refining it. That did so much for me because it's like a flywheel. Flywheels, they take a while to get going, but once they get going, the speed really picks up, and that's exactly what happened to me. In the beginning, it was really slow, but I could see progress. I mean, it was little, but it was progress, and that gave me the encouragement. I knew I was on the right path, and I just stayed laser focused with that compass, and there was no going off tangents like I had done for 40 years. That was a key ingredient for both building wealth and my company, making my company too.
Okay, so let's hear about this compass. This is
Sure.
fascinating. I really want to hear, I know Lizzie does too, because, again, we were left with nothing. And, still we're both trying to rebuild because, when you divorce in midlife, it's a lot different than when you divorce in your 20s or even early 30s, because now you're like, I have this many working days left and I have possible health issues even, especially if you're in that bad relationship. And now I'm behind the eight ball. I'm supposed to be like, gearing up for retirement. But the financial part and the investing is so confusing. And then everybody has a different opinion. I mean, I've been really studying investing for a while. And I think I'm just as confused as when I started, studying it. So I'd love to hear your wisdom.
First, let me tell you why it's so confusing. Then I'll show you how to make it less confusing, a lot less confusing. Wall Street loves complexity. The truth is, okay, simplicity is for winners. Complexity is for victims. And Wall Street wants victims because if you're confused, you need them. You're dependent on them, just like a dependent toxic relationship. I guess you could maybe even say that. You're dependent on them, and they get their slice of your pie. And it seems like a little sliver, but that little sliver, when you compound over years, is a huge sliver. It's not a little sliver. And they feed on you being confused. And when I started really digging in there, I thought to myself, well, this isn't that confusing if you really look at it all together and bring it all together. And so what I did, and I'm going to give you all your listeners this for free, so I just want to show this real quickly. This is the one page, this is the actual compass I use. It took me from 63, nearly broke, to 69, a 7-figure portfolio and real financial freedom. And it's just 2 columns here. It's real simple. The first column is 9 trail markers to financial freedom. And it's just simple steps to get from wherever you are right now, and it's going to be different for different people, and where they want to go. For example, the first one I have is career and income success. Most of those financial books I read, they didn't say anything about your income because they assumed, well, if you're reading a financial book or money investing, you don't need help with that because you're obviously making money or you wouldn't be reading my book. Okay, that's not true. There's a lot of people who are underemployed, underappreciated, undervalued in their job and don't even like their job. And so I devoted the first 2 chapters of my book of doing what I did and reinventing yourself, if that's what you need to do, to make the kind of money that you really need and deserve to be making. Now, other people might say, no, David, I'm fine with my career. I'm making good money, but I got credit card debt. I really do. Well, then they wouldn't worry about number 1. They would go right to number 3, debt freedom. And then they would start working on that. But here's the thing about that is, so anyways, that's how you go down the list and you just pick up where you're at. Other side is the 5 North Star principles. This is like the mental guardrails to keep you from going in the gutter. It just keeps you safe. And they're principles that when you get a question that you don't know the answer and it wasn't covered in the trail markers, you go, does it go against one of the principles? Oh, yeah, it does. It goes against, and I'm not going to do that. That's the bad, it just keeps you safe from it. And so together they work so powerfully. And what's kind of neat about it is, say you're on step number 3, debt freedom. And you go, okay, David, but I need more help than just a couple of words after debt freedom. Can you give me some more details? What's this here? See chapter 4. And what you do is you just go to the book and look into chapter 4, and it covers the whole topic of debt freedom, different ways to get out of it, how to do it in a painless way, how to do it in a way that gives you encouragement, not dreading it, that kind of thing. And so when you put these things together, this is like the 30,000-foot view. This is the ground game. Take a right at the light. Take a left at the stop sign. It gives you the details that people need to support that 30, because you just can't have the executive view. You also got to have the D. And these things work together like hand in glove, and it gives you a sense of clarity that few people ever get in finances. And let me tell you one more thing I do that's really important is every week I have my calendar. I have a 2-minute wealth checkup meeting with myself. And what I do is I sit down with my wealth compass. I look at where I'm at on the compass, what my next step's going to be, and look at my North Star principles to make sure that I'm keeping safe. I remember once I did that, and the week before I made an impulse purchase. Okay? Now, one of the rules is if you're going to make an impulse purchase, you got to wait 24 hours. Because half the time when you make 24 hours, you realize, I don't really need that. I'm just excited about the moment. But I didn't wait. And so I caught myself in that meeting, that 2-minute meeting with myself. And I said, I violated that. So guess what happened next week? I didn't do it. Next week, I didn't do it. But if I hadn't had that checkup, I could have done it the next week, 6 months, a year, 2 years later, I could be $10,000, $20,000, $50,000 into impulse purchases, which a lot of people are, believe it or not. And so it keeps you safe. It keeps you grounded. And have you ever read a book and there was a great idea in the book? And you says, man, that's going to change my life. And then 2 years later, you come across the idea and you go, oh yeah, I meant to do that. I kind of forgot about it. Well, you can't do that with this system because when you have that 2-minute meeting and you're still in the same step and you're not budging, you got to say, wait a minute, I got to do something here and so it's kind of a nice behavior modification that's private between you and yourself, but it kind of nudges you along on the path so you don't just forget about everything. And then all of a sudden, 3 years later, you're worse off. Not the same. You're worse off than you were before. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's how it all come together.
Yeah, it totally does. Lizzie, do you have anything to add?
I was just thinking I like the whole compass idea. First of all, to me, I think of a compass. I think of something that is very grounding. It's something that has been timeless throughout decades and it's still strong today. And the fact that I think you picked a really good title because it does. It's that feeling inside that gives us that little bit of hope of, oh yeah, if I follow this, then I can have and work towards this.
Yep.
Yeah.
And also to address what Deanna was saying earlier about like there's a lot of confusion out there and all that kind of thing, which is by design, by the way. When you are surrounded by noise and confusion and you have a compass to guide you, all of a sudden that noise and confusion just kind of dissipates. It just kind of goes away because you see the direction you're supposed to go, and you don't need to listen to all that other garbage out there that they're trying to pull you because they want to make money off you as opposed to helping you do what's best for you. And that's really critical. But can I mention to you also something that a lot of people, I think it might help people in a practical way. I doubled my portfolio 3 times in that 6-year period. A lot of people in finance say, David, that's not possible. The market didn't go up that much. You're either a liar or you're delusional. Well, I'm not either. Okay, let me explain. First, I wasn't day trading. I wasn't chasing crypto. I wasn't trying to time the market. I was doing the exact opposite of that. I was doing something so boring it would put you to sleep. Here's the crazy part about the whole thing. When the market was down, I was thrilled. When other people were panicking and selling, I was buying more shares at discount prices. My only regret was the market was down more during that 6-year period because I'd been even better than that. But what really surprised me was the math. There's a thing in finance called the rule of 72. And what it says is, if you're getting, say, a 10% return on your money will double every 7.2 years or roughly every 86 months. Once I got my compass in place, my first double occurred in just 30 months. The second one, 13 months. The third one, 29 months for an average of 24 months, way less than half the 86-month expected time. But, the returns wasn't the secret. I finally figured out through my compass how to do 3 things that I had not done for 40 years. And let me just share what they are because I think it may help people. Number 1, I saved 1% of my money off the top. You've heard the saying, pay yourself first or something like that. But when I hit my checking account, my pay, before I did anything, before I paid a single bill, spent a penny on it, I took a percentage off that and put it onto the side into savings. Okay, just set it over there. Okay. The second thing I did is I got into the right kind of investments for a change. And what they are, for me anyways, is low-cost index funds. I only own 2 of them. This is how incredibly simple my investment plan is. One, I own every publicly traded stock in the United States in one fund. The other fund is every publicly traded stock outside the United States. So I literally own every publicly traded stock on the planet. For me to go under, to go bankrupt, to go to zero, the entire world economic system would have to collapse. And if that happens, we got bigger problems than money. Okay, but the point is I sleep so good at night because I am so diversified. If some company tanks, it's just one of my thousands of companies. I don't care. And I only own a little slice of it. You can do this very inexpensively. You must have to spend, no, it's very inexpensive to buy a share of these things. But the last thing I did, the third thing, was market volatility. I used it to work for me instead of against me. Okay, so many people buy high and sell low, which is the opposite of what you want to do, which is what I did for 40 years, because they let their emotions determine their investments. That is the worst thing you can do. Once you understand it, once you have a compass, the emotions go pushed to the side. And now you're really, it's crazy. If you ever went to the department store and saw a sign, 50% off sale, you would never go up to the clerk and say, hey, I don't want no 50% off. You tell me what's going back to full retail. I only buy things at full retail. You'd be crazy. They haul you off to a nut house if you did that, okay? But yet, people do that with the stock market every day. Oh my gosh, it dropped 20%, 50%. I got to pull my money out. I'm getting cash. No, that's when you actually want to buy. That's when things are on sale. For over 200 years, every time the market has gone down, it is not only fully recovered, but has gone on to new heights. 200 years of data is good enough for me. I feel very comfortable with that plan, okay? And that's the real deal here. One morning I was watching the cable news channel and the financial news. I never would take advice from them, but I watch them for entertainment purposes. And one day they're gloom and doom. Oh my gosh, the market's crashing. Pull your money out. All kind of thing. And I'm laughing. I'm laughing as I'm having breakfast, okay? And my wife says, honey, you can't laugh. This is serious. We got money in the market. They're saying it's crashing. Shouldn't we get out? I go, honey, they don't know. They're just guessing. They're half the time they're right, half the time they're wrong. And who cares because it doesn't mean anything to us. I love Warren Buffett's phrase. He says this, forecasts tell you a lot about the forecast, about the forecaster, but nothing about the market. And that's so true. You learn about the person who's doing the forecast, but you learn nothing about that. Who could predict 9/11? Who could predict COVID? Those aren't financial things, but they have there's nobody who has a crystal ball. Nobody has it. So you need a system that no matter what the weather is like in terms of the economy, it's a steady, stable thing that just keeps you growing like it did for me for 6 years and beyond. And so I hope that helps people.
Yeah, definitely. And you know what? I would like to take this and make it a little bit more practical for our guests.
Please.
So can I just throw a scenario at you?
Yes, please do.
Okay. So I'm coming to you for advice because I am, recently divorced. I've been married for decades, have
Yeah,
kids.
sure.
All of a sudden I'm terrified because now I'm in charge of the family, just like
Yeah,
you were saying. Obviously I'm going through all the emotions and all the terror and all the identity crisis that you can imagine.
sure.
But my biggest fear is just survival at this point. So what would you tell me to do? And it could be that I have a job. It could be that I was a stay-at-home mom and I didn't have a job. But either scenario, I don't have enough to make it. So what would be your
Thank you.
advice and what would be some steps, some practical
Okay.
steps?
I get this question a lot in different forums. What you're saying, what's the best place for everyone to start? And that kind of thing. And I'm here to say there is no one best place. Here's how I would recommend it because I just passionately believe this. I would literally take out this compass and I would say, I would look at all the 9 trail markers. I say, where am I at? Some people that you described, they don't even have a career yet. Well, that's going to be that until they get that solved. We got to, we need to focus 100% on that. All the people say, no, I'm a school teacher, I'm a nurse, or whatever the heck they are. I can, but I'm in debt. I mean, my ex, whatever, racked up cards, and somehow I got stuck with a bunch of them and all kind of thing. Well, then that's where they're going to start. So in other words, start where you're at and just sit down calmly after the kids are in bed and you're, have a whatever, and just look through the list and say, okay, I am really on step 4, or I'm really on step 2. That's where I need to start. And it says right there the chapter number. So I'm going to just go right to that chapter and I'm going to just have a cup of coffee and read this chapter, right now, or whatever it is. And that's where I would start, because there is no one size fits all. I mean, everyone's unique, everyone's different, and everyone's on a different path. Some people, in, like you're saying, that situation, they were being abused, but they had an actual job and they actually had an income. Other people, no, they were stay at home and they had nothing and they need to, does that make sense what I'm saying? Yeah. So that's what
Yeah.
I would do.
Okay. So you follow the book. And then, so basically, it sounds to me like what you're saying is the first thing that I would say a she
Sure.
in this case, she needs to do is to secure a source of income. So secure a source of income, which, some work might need to happen for finding herself and her talents and what she can do to bring in income.
Yep.
And so
and it might be their own job. It might be self-employment too. I mean, there's a lot of women entrepreneurs out there that do phenomenal. So it just depends.
Yeah.
One thing I would recommend, and I say this in my book, is it's good to invest in, these are free, a lot of them, to take a personality test to find out, where your strengths are, where your weaknesses are, so you don't get a job you hate. My first job, when I was in college, I was a major in accounting. I hated accounting. And I worked for a CPA firm. I hated that. My personality is totally different than accountants. Nothing wrong with their profession, but but personality, so you don't spend 2 years on the wrong path, is what I recommend.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that. And I also think that if you have a job that you don't like, then you're not going to do it long.
No.
And I've told this to people before that I worked with. It'd be better for you to get a little bit less pay and love what you're doing and do it longer, because you'll get those raises, you'll move up the ladder, you won't have these tolls on your health. Exactly. Because you'll stick it out longer. But if you have this really high paying job that exacts a toll on you and your health, then you have to leave in a couple of years just to recover. Well, then you're starting from scratch. It would have been better for you to take a little lower pay, or even a lot lower pay, and just be in for the long haul, and maybe even be able to squeeze in some side work because it's not a stressful position.
Yep. And then when you're passionate about what you're doing too, you're going to blossom, and things are going to happen that wouldn't have happened. And when you're in pain with what you're doing, things aren't going to blossom. They're going to maybe retreat, that kind of thing. So I agree with you 100%. Deanna, that's a really good advice, I think.
So another one I want to say, because I think this is really important. I know that the steps, the financial actual steps, are in your book, but what would you say to that woman that is like literally in full-fledged panic? Like, how does she bring those emotions down? What does she need to tell herself? What did she need to say to herself? What did you do to calm yourself down, to start believing in yourself again? What did you have to do to get there? Because, it is a mental game too. We all know this.
It is. And it's a spiritual game too. It really is. And I'll tell you, if it wasn't for my faith, I don't think I could have done what I did. I really don't. Because, I mean, I was so blessed at every turn, it seemed like. And it was hard. It's funny. I don't know if you've ever heard the statement before, but it says, pray like everything depends on God, and then get up and work like everything depends on you. Well, that's all we were doing for 6 years, is working and praying, because that was just the whole thing. And as I look back now, that was a blessing that I got fired. My life is so much better now. I am so much more free, not just financially. That's true. That's very important, but just emotionally and spiritually, and being able to give, be able to control my own destiny and my own day and structure it the way I want to structure it, not the way somebody else wants it. I should send that company a gift basket and a thank you letter for firing me. I really should, because I didn't, I'll be honest with you, ladies, I didn't have the guts to quit. I knew 8 years before I was fired, I should have quit. But who quits in their late 50s when they are making six figures? They got an amazing job, great pay, great company car. Who does that? I didn't have the guts. I didn't have the guts.
This is hilarious, David, because Lizzie right here is in her late 50s. She has a great job, one of the best she's ever had.
Okay.
And she's about to leave because she's just decided that she's got the guts to do it. And you know what? It is definitely going to be a faith walk. And it's going to be a wing and a prayer because she just knows in her heart that this is not where she belongs anymore. She knows for a fact. But you know what? Those dollar signs are not sitting there waiting for her. They're not. Yeah. There's nothing waiting for her. So I love that you said that because that just kind of tickles me because she and I just
I have said that multiple times. Who quits their job in their 50s? Because the chance to get that back, and it is a walk of faith too, right?
It really is.
And for me, that's where I am. Yeah.
Lizzie, you have more courage and faith than I did at 50, in my late 50s. And I salute you, and I'm just impressed because I didn't have the guts to do it. I just didn't do it. And but you know what? The Lord blessed me. He made it so I got nudged out of the nest, of the corporate nest, because he knew I couldn't do it, but he knew I needed to do it. You know, I heard somebody once, they were going through a really dark period. Just the burden was almost too much for them to handle. And they had a prayer, and they says, please, Lord, relieve me of this burden. It's really more than I think I might be able to handle. And the answer they got back in their mind was, I love you too much to deny you of this experience. That was me. I wanted to be relieved of that. I didn't want to go through that. But thank God that God loved me too much to deny me of that experience, because that was such a blessing to go through that. It really was. At the time, I didn't realize it all, but looking back, it was a gift, a tremendous gift.
And that's the way he works. And I think of just even walking through my dark time in the divorce. I've had 2 divorces. And, you know, I always look at the symbolism of what marriage means to me and my faith. Sometimes you learn that it's just, you're not in charge of the person, obviously, that's made the choices they made.
That's right.
But I don't know how, whether it's going through a divorce, financial destruction, whatever it is, I don't know how people make it without their faith, because it does give you something to lean into, you know, and something that will comfort you through that. And the fact that he carried you through poverty pretty much to hope, and not just hope for what God's done in your life, but also it speaks to people like me where you're like, oh my goodness, because I'm kind of getting to that point where you almost have to hit rock bottom, but it's sometimes really hard to pick up. And it really does take bending at the knee and just praying, and really you became more self-educated in different areas of finances. And that's kind of what it is. It's like you're back to, you don't want to call it the school of hard knocks, but it feels like the school of hard knocks. But it's not because you chose to be there. It's because it's where you're meant to be too. So you said that, and I'm just like, wow.
Can I tell you also how I think how God works? I mean, I'm not the all-knowing person, but I'm just my impression of how God works. I know a lot of people who are good Christian people. They pay tithing, they go to church, they just decent people. I mean, you don't get much better than them. But when they got to their senior years and retired, they went through excruciating financial pain. Some of them actually were making decisions between food and medications or food and rent. People say, why? That's not fair. Why didn't God take care of him? Why did he let that happen to him? No, I don't believe it was that God didn't let that happen to him. I believe that we let it happen to ourselves. Here's the thing. I believe God works by principles of truth, and he doesn't violate those principles. You can have a really good life in one area, like your spiritual life, but if you don't have your financial life together, that's going to overshadow everything else. And if you're living incorrect, even though you're a good person, incorrect financial principles, you're going to have the consequences of that. God's going to let that happen, not because he's mean, because, you know, that's just how life operates with. And that's one of the reasons I wrote this book, because I've seen so many people where I could have almost been in that situation that are suffering, that don't have to suffer if they just knew how to do this. That's so critical. I don't know if you agree with that, but that's really how I believe that, you know, we can be really good in one area of our life, but if we don't have correct principles in another area of life, we're going to suffer. I really believe that.
Well, and they say waiting on God is a very active wait too. So
Yeah.
it's not just sitting down and hanging
No.
out and waiting for it to happen.
No,
Yeah.
you got it.
No, and there's so many spiritual principles, even in the Bible. The parable of burying your treasure in the sand. You know, the ruler like has a servant who just gives him a portion of gold, and he just buries it. Another one goes and invests it and makes more. You know, it's like there are just many, many, many scriptures that relate to money. And so money is not unspiritual. I mean, no ministry in the entire world could take place, you know, digging water wells for children in other countries and feeding people that are hungry, spreading the gospel. Like there's nothing in this world that can be taken care of without money. So money is a very spiritual principle. And I 100% agree with that. It's educating yourself on what that is and what that looks like and what you need to do, because we're in a very privileged society, and we've gotten really used to credit cards and the nicer things of life. And well, I want it, so I'm going to get it. You know, we've really lost the art of managing our money properly. It's not sexy, you know, it's very practical and sometimes very hard.
Can I address another fear that I think a lot of people might have that are listening to this program right now is, David, come on, financial book, that's the most boring thing. If I want to go to sleep at night, I'll get one and read it, because charts and graphs and all that kind of thing, that's not me. I'm just not that kind of person. Well, let me assure you, I understand that. When I read those 21 books, although they had great information in them, they were on the boring side, I have to admit to you. But here's the thing I did. When I wrote this book, I says, I'm not going to do it this way. I'm going to write it for the average person who has no financial background whatsoever. I'm going to put in it stories that are true of people who succeeded and people who failed. And when I show the 2 case studies, then I'm going to explain the principle. And people are telling me now, finally, I get it, David. I've heard these terms before, but no one's ever explained it. I was kind of embarrassed to ask. But when you show me how not to do it, then how to do it, and what the consequences of both are, and then you explain the principle, it makes so much sense. It's not complicated at all. I thought it was too complicated. And if I could just briefly, I want to read this one review because it applies to what we're talking about here. I read them all personally. This from a clinical psychologist with 25 years experience, no financial background whatsoever. He said, the one-page compass gave me the exact financial hope and practical steps he needed when he was going through his own career crisis. But here's the part of the quote I like the most. He says, I couldn't put the book down. That's how it was written. It's almost like a novel, but it's a true thing. And yes, it's interesting and you love the stories, but you're getting educated along the way with the stories. They're all packaged together. And so if you're afraid of financial books or just think it's going to be as boring as all get out, please try this one, because it's very different than the other ones. And I really, that was a top priority of mine, to not make it a boring financial book, because most people would just not want to be involved.
I love that, David. And we can find your book on Amazon, right?
Yes, anywhere on Amazon, or you can go to my website.com and you can download for free this one-page wealth compass, and there's no strings or obligation. I have nothing to sell in the book. I'm on my website. I have free stuff, a blog, letters. I have the ask me a question section. You can ask me a question, whatever it is. So please go there. Everything's free. I'm not doing this for money. My company had its best year ever last year. This is a passion project for me. I just don't want anybody 63 where I was on the verge of collapse. It's just wrong. I feel like I was blessed to get a lifeline in a terrible storm, and through this inspiration, this compass. And I think it's the ultimate selfishness for me not to share it with people. And that's my whole mission and purpose. That's the only reason I want to.
That's how you're giving back. And I love it. And actually, I'm just going to put this caveat in there. We've been doing financial abuse and red flags. And next week, we also have a podcast being released of some steps for someone that just gets out of a financially abusive relationship. And I'm going to post this recording and this podcast after that. So it's going to be in the same week, because I think we have some heavy topics of talking about financial abuse and the red flags. This will give people hope.
Yep.
It's perfect. Yeah.
I mean, really, for you to, in what, 6 years or so, you became a millionaire like that. And I think what you're saying is, if you can do it, anybody can do it type thing, right? Because really, you just went from having no job and being a senior adult almost, to making this happen. And then you're just doing this as a love project, which is amazing too.
But can I also add, because I want to be fully transparent here, I am not saying, because I am not a get rich quick person. I'm the opposite of that. Okay. But I'm not saying in 6 years everyone's going to be a millionaire. But what I am saying is, in 6 years or 5 years or whatever, you'll be a lot better off than where you are. And who
Yeah.
cares? There's always people richer and poorer than you. I hate to compare myself to other people. They say that comparison is a thief of joy. And I truly believe that. It's not about, am I richer or what? It's, am I better off than I was? And, oh, I am so much better off. And it's not that it's a million or multi-million dollar portfolio. It's just that I'm better off, and everyone can be better off. And better off is different from different people for different situations.
Yeah. That's
Absolutely.
so true. I will agree with that 100%, and it gives hope. It's just sometimes we have to get ourselves in there and dig deeper and learn and work and really prioritize what's first and what's second and what's third.
Yeah, and hope was the word, Lizzie.
Yeah, I agree. Hope. Can I share one more thing that for those who are procrastinators like me, for 40 years, I procrastinated this whole thing. I thought, oh, I'll have time to invest. I'll have time to learn it. And oh my gosh, what a nightmare. But this is from the National Council on Aging. And I think if we all hear these statistics from an unbiased organization that's not out for anything, but just it gives you the truth, I think it might help everybody. 80% of older adults face financial insecurity. I didn't say 20% or 50%. I said 80%. That's most of the senior population. Most of them, not some of them, most of them. 50% of people 60 plus do not have sufficient income to cover basic needs, housing, food, and healthcare. Half seniors, half of them. Now, this last one I want to share. Number one cause for gut-wrenching stress for seniors is the fear of running out of money before they run out of life. These were people who worked for 40 plus years, good, loyal employees who helped make their employers rich, but they forgot to do one thing, work on their own wealth building skills, okay? I don't want that to happen to anybody. Please don't procrastinate. I don't care if you're in your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, your 50s, your 60s, your 70s. It's never too late. Start now. Take the simple compass. It's free. There's no obligation here. And just find out where you are and where your next step is going to be. And don't make it complicated, please.
That's perfect. And I know you're going to have the one-page sheet that everybody can download for free. And we'll have that in the description, you guys. So whether you're on YouTube or a podcast or wherever you find us, we will have that document there so that you can download that and have that for free if you're in a financial situation where you can't even really get a book right now. And then go to David's website, see what he's got on there, see what he's got for free, reach out to him if you need to. You know, he's doing this to help you. So thank you.
Yeah. I'm enjoying this. Thank you for allowing me to be on your program today. I appreciate that a lot.
It was our joy, David. Thank you.
Thanks.
If you're walking through financial fear, financial devastation, bankruptcy, divorce, or the overwhelming reality of starting over later in life, we hope this conversation reminded you that your future is not over. Healing and rebuilding do not have an expiration date. Sometimes the hardest seasons of our lives become the very places where God begins redirecting us toward freedom, wisdom, and purpose we never imagined possible. Thank you for spending this time with us today. If this episode did encourage you, please share it with someone who may need hope right now, and subscribe to help more women find these conversations, because you are not alone, you are not crazy, and you are deeply loved. Thank you, and we do hope you have a wonderful day.